I want to welcome all you fellow extremists to this meeting. I think we should just sit down and, like Phyllis Diller used to say, can we talk? I think we can solve this problem with a civil discussion on whether the government should take over health care or not. Goldwater said an extremist in pursuit of freedom is no vice. Moderation in defense of liberty is no virtue. So with that definition, I'm proud to be an extremist that is in hot pursuit of freedom. Because freedom is not free, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Ronald Reagan said, freedom is a very fragile thing. It's never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't inherit it in our bloodstreams. It has to be continually fought for in every generation. Now we're told to trust the government. I saw a caption of a saber-toothed tiger once with the fangs sticking out, and the caption underneath said, "Trust me." And the government says we should trust them. A government that has created ACORN to be advisors to the White House, a government that has demonstrated that they can spend our country into oblivion with taxation. Who would think our country was founded on taxation without representation? Like 3% tax on tea. On tea. Now, if that happened today, how many Americans would even raise an eyebrow? Let alone raise the roof like our forefathers did. And Thomas Jefferson said the power to tax is the power to destroy. And even though King George was charging less than what they were smuggling the tea from, they knew that if they allowed taxation without representation, where the king didn't have the power to tax, it would destroy their freedoms and possibly forever. And so the penalty was death for throwing tea into the river. And so we are at a crossroads now in America in the 11th hour, where the expansion of government power is the greatest threat to our freedom. As government expands, freedom contracts. And we have to look at how this is going to affect our very livelihood in the future. They say there's not going to be any taxation with this. It has the potential to bankrupt America forever, and it can never be reversed. Basically, it violates several different factors that our country was founded on. For instance, the First Amendment. A gag order was sent to all insurance companies, ordering them not to mention any aspects of this health care reform. Direct violation of the First Amendment. The Fourth Amendment, your right to privacy. Your private medical records will be part of a federal database used to deny care later on, because in the book, What is Your Life Worth? Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Decides? They're developing formularies now with the value of every symptom and every diagnosis known to man. And so your comorbidity factors will be taken into account on whether you receive care or not. Let's say you have a heart attack when you're 60. But then we look at your medical records, find out you were a smoker and you're overweight and you maybe had a back operation, you're partially disabled. Why would the government want to spend $50,000 on you? Because it doesn't fit into global budgets. And we have to look at where the return on the investment is the greatest. That's why in Canada, they don't pay for certain types of cancer treatment over age 55. England, people are pulling their own teeth with pliers because they can't get access to care. People have no idea. Last week, I referred a patient for an MRI. They got him in 15 minutes. The average wait in Canada is 15 months. So why would we want to go that direction? Americans can vote themselves into despotism and tyranny because they don't understand the principles of freedom. If they want government security, which basically is a myth, they can live in a maximum security prison and they feed you 3 times a day. You got 4 walls around you. I'd rather live in freedom. If we put an eagle in a cage all its life and open the door and expect it to earn its own food, it won't. Because when we stifle innovation and creativity for the soup kitchen of the welfare state, we destroy the spirit of man. Socialism is the greatest destroyer of our creativity that made America great. There's a book called The 5,000-Year Leap, how our country accomplished more in 200 years than the previous 5,000 years of civilization, because the principles of freedom. Our country was founded not that all men would be equal, but that they have all the equal opportunity to use the talents that God's given them to the best of their ability and to climb as high up that ladder as their ambitions will take them. That's what made America great. You can't multiply wealth by dividing it. You can't legislate the poor into freedom by legislating the rich out of freedom. if 120 million Americans will be into a single-payer system the first year, according to the Congressional Budget Office, the top 1% of income producers in America are paying more tax than 95% of the people combined. Now, when the people pulling the cart have to now pull another 120 million people that jump inside the cart, it doesn't take a lot of genius to figure out the people pulling the cart saying, I'm tired of carrying the whole load, and our whole system can implode. You know, a young charismatic leader in a neighboring country, small country, promised equality, promised prosperity, and Fidel Castro promised everybody a chicken in every pot. He promised them equality. Within 10 years, they were rationing food, and where the average Cuban is getting 2 eggs a month. Do we want to go that direction in America? I don't think so. We need to know where that road leads. We don't have to guess. Somehow those people in power think, well, we can operate a socialistic government much better than other countries. We've got a great empire here, but you know, when you look at civilizations that have fallen, like Rome became rich and powerful, but the country became full of drunkenness and immorality, and it came crumbling down. Because as Adam Smith said in The Wealth of Nations, the strength of a country is in the character and productivity of its people. Thomas Jefferson said, I predict the happiness of the American people if they can prevent the government from confiscating the fruits of their labor under the pretense of taking care of them. You know, there's a story of a small-town preacher in Lexington. His name was Jonas Clark. And he was the only person in town with more than a high school education. Everybody in town went to his church. He was the most respected man in his community. And the night before Paul Revere's ride, John Adams and John Hancock were having dinner at the house of Jonas Clark. And John Hancock asked John Adams, if it means war, do you think the people will fight for freedom? Jonas Clark stood up and he didn't say, well, I don't know, I don't like to preach on anything that isn't politically correct. He didn't say that. He says, I know they're ready because I've prepared them just for that. And the next day, the shot heard around the world occurred in the parking lot of Jonas Clark's church, where several of his parishioners lay dead. And he looked at the people, and he said, let this be known as the day freedom in the world started everywhere. And those were the convictions our forefathers had because they know freedom was more precious than life itself. And they came here facing starvation, facing insurmountable obstacles because they wanted to be free. And we built the greatest land in the world because of the dedication and commitment of the cause of liberty. And so I want to prepare us for fighting for freedom because we're at a major crossroads in America. And think of the story of the shot heard around the world of the price that was paid for liberty. Eternal vigilance is that price. And that's our challenge to each of you today.